This podcast and the experiences detailed reflect the stories and opinions of persons interviewed or members of the public and do not represent the viewpoints or positions of the New York State Office of Children and Family Services.
Welcome to the Rooted in Solutions Growing Futures podcast. I'm Dr. Galen Gomes.
And I'm Kelly Riley Marks. Before we begin the first episode of our Elevating Fatherhood Voice series, we want to note that you may find some of what you hear triggering.
Listen, if you are a father or you are supportive of fatherhood, this podcast is for you. Our goal is to uplift voices that have gone through the child welfare process and, as part of that, be honest about their struggles, what worked, and where systems could have done better.
We are discussing this as we try to improve our understanding and find proactive solutions. Let's begin today's conversation.
We are so excited to start this podcast and explore the parental rights and roles of fathers. At the New York State Office of Children and Family Services, our goal is to promote the safety, permanence, and well-being of our children, families, and communities.
Throughout the series, you'll hear directly from experts and those who have walked the walk. Today's episode focuses on fatherhood rights and responsibilities.
So this is an extremely important topic for individuals out there who are currently maybe experiencing interaction with that system. Hopefully we can lend a voice and some help to them.
Absolutely. I think that facing the system, whether it's your first time or reoccurring, it's extremely daunting for various reasons. It's a system, right? And it can feel like you are unaware of your rights and your responsibilities as a parent in general.
Yeah, and it can be overwhelming. Even if you are someone who you feel you are prepared, maybe you do have a knowledge base, actually going through that process can be overwhelming. In addition to the insightful conversations we will have on the podcast with a team of experts in law, mental health, fatherhood, and life, we will introduce you to Felix Garcia, whose voice will guide us through each episode. Felix's daughter was placed in foster care, which started a long battle to regain his rights.
In each episode, you will hear a part of Felix's story as we explore different topics related to fatherhood.
Felix's journey with the child welfare system began after he says he noticed signs his daughter's mother, who was a recovering addict, was beginning to relapse. Felix says he filed a petition, but following an altercation, his daughter's maternal grandfather called the police.
Felix says 2 CPS workers instructed him to sign paperwork he did not fully understand, while looking back, gave his daughter's grandfather temporary residential custody.
The way they explained it to me, I was under the impression that it was going to be a temporary thing. They gave us a court date, so I was like, this first court date, I should be able to get my daughter back, which wasn't the case. So I'm assuming the paper said something about him having temporary custody at the time. I was heated. I was young in the moment, so I really didn't know what I was, signing.
This was the start of a lengthy battle where Felix began questioning the effect he could and was having as a father.
That impacts you every day. You mentally, especially like you said, when you're having such little time with your daughter, you start to question, as time dwindles, are you actually even having an impact at all with such little time that you're having? But any impact at all is great. But it is definitely a mental game to get through. There was a lot of trials and tribulations that I had to go through to get through that. But for the most part, it was definitely mental. There's multiple times where you feel like giving up, multiple times where you feel like you're fighting a losing battle.
Kelly, at the time, Felix says he did not have an education in how the system worked or on his rights as a father.
So thinking about Felix's journey and my experience with child welfare, we see this time and time again with fathers for the first time that they're interfacing with the child welfare system, right? It's something that you don't necessarily understand until you go through it. So not having that understanding, it started him off at such a hard place, right? And something he cared so deeply about, intimately about his own daughter, right?
Yeah, and I think to your point about starting off at a hard place, I can imagine the amount of fathers who starting from that point found it extremely difficult and extremely daunting to try to continue in a resilient manner through that?
For sure. It's a lengthy, long process, grueling process. So to continue to find the strength to be able to navigate the system is very difficult.
Now, to learn more about fatherhood rights and responsibilities, let's bring in Judge Richard Rivera.
A graduate of Colgate University and Albany Law School, Judge Rivera has had a long career in overseeing matters about orders of protection, custody, and domestic violence. He has served on Albany Family Court and in 2019 was designated Acting Supreme Court Justice for the 3rd Judicial District.
Welcome, Judge Rivera. Thank you so much for joining us. Would you please share your journey as a family court judge, and particularly why family court? What sparked you?
Sure, and thank you for having me on the program. I have to go back to my childhood. When I was young, growing up in the Bronx, I wanted to be a judge. I decided I want to be a judge because I didn't like the way we were treated by the criminal justice system. But my plan was to be a criminal court judge. But, life has a way of playing tricks on you. So I was looking for a job and saw an ad for a staff attorney position in family court through the law school. And I applied for it and got hired. And that's when my career in family law in general started. My interest developed in law school. I still wanted to be a family court practitioner. I still wanted to be a criminal court practitioner, criminal court judge. But I figured if I didn't do that, maybe family court. So when the job opened up, I took it. And I started representing survivors of domestic violence in the courts of Rensselaer County, Albany, and a few now and then in Saratoga and Schenectady. That's when my full-time career started. From there, I became, at some point, an attorney for the child. Back then, we were called law guardians, so I represented children in family court. I worked for the alternate public defender's office, doing primarily their family court work, so representing parents in family court, not in all aspects, custody, visitation, neglect, and abuse. In 2010, prior to that, I went from the alternate public defender's office to the county attorney's office, prosecuting juvenile delinquents, which is also done in family court. And then in 2010, I was hired as a child support magistrate, and in 2014, elected to the family court bench. That's sort of, in a nutshell, my trajectory. Yeah. But it was far from what I planned to do when I decided that I wanted to become a judge. It's funny because my brother's godmother said that I was going to be a lawyer when I grew up. Yeah. And I remember thinking, this crazy lady has no idea what she's talking about. To me, a lawyer was a boring job, right? You wear a suit 24/7 and sit behind a desk. Well, I didn't know that to become a judge, I needed to be a lawyer. She knew something I didn't.
Yeah. For sure. And what a journey you had to that role. What are ways that child welfare stakeholders and practitioners can educate fathers on their rights and responsibilities?
So I think it starts with, first, not making any assumptions, and then putting yourselves in their shoes. Mm-hmm. So, for example, if you're going to investigate a family because there's an abuse or neglect allegation made, don't assume anything when you get there, and place yourself in their shoes. If I was this father, this mother, what would I want to know? If I'm giving them a piece of paper and saying, here, sign this, what kind of questions would I have? Because they may not feel they can ask questions. And I happen to know that I was reading what some of the information you had on Felix, I believe is the gentleman's name, mm-hmm. and how he was given a piece of paper to sign. He had no idea what he was signing. That the person who gave him that piece of paper, if they were putting themselves in his shoes, should have said, do you understand what you're signing? Right. Do you realize that by signing this piece of paper, you are authorizing us to give custody of your children to their grandfather or their grandmother, or to place them in foster care? Yeah. And not just assume, even if they read it, that they would understand. I happen to be bilingual, and I understand that that's another area where a lot of assumptions are made. That just because someone may nod and say yes and speak certain words, that they understand the language fully. So that's why I say don't make any assumptions. Ask questions and place yourself in their shoes. And whatever questions you would normally have, ask so that you can give them the answers, or just provide the information. Let them know you have a right to an attorney. In New York State, When it comes to these matters, if you cannot afford to hire one, you do have the right to request that the court appoint one at no cost to you. You tell them you don't have to sign this. If you want to talk to a lawyer first and get advice, we'll wait. So give them. New York City has a program, and I know this is a long answer to a short question, but New York City has a program called At the Front Door that I just heard about, where the caseworkers, when they go to the front door of the home, they inform the person of all their rights, even before entering the home, including that you have a right to say, no, we can't come in. It's that type of thing, right? Letting them know off the bat, these are what your rights are.
Yeah. I'm glad you actually added that piece, because I was getting ready to jump in and ask you about if what you're talking about sometimes is individuals having to check themselves at the door. So how are you showing up? How are you approaching the situation? And what do you need to put in check before you actually engage in that situation? So that leads to, historically, how have you seen gender and racial bias improve or evolve in your time as a family court judge?
Well, I'll start by saying that I have seen some improvement. Part of that is personal to me as a judge. When I was representing parents, I would get a lot of sort of criticism, or a lot of fathers felt like the court system was biased toward women, toward mothers, and against fathers. And I would see that sometimes, where the judge would simply take the other party's word for it because she's the mother. So, yeah, we're going to give her custody. This idea that a father cannot be a father. And I remember thinking to myself as I was practicing, if I ever become a judge, I'm going to I'm not going to approach any case that way, because fathers and mothers have equal rights. Yes, in most cases, the mothers are the ones who are doing everything, and the fathers are not necessarily in the picture. But that doesn't mean that they can't learn it. Doesn't mean they can't do it. And it doesn't mean that they won't if you give them the opportunity. And so I have seen that there's been a change in the perspective from the court's end. There are still fathers out there, a lot of men out there, who still believe that family court is woman-centered, that it's biased in favor of women and against fathers. And I'm sure that they probably can point out to reasons why they believe that. But I think that we've made some progress in our court system, and we've given fathers an opportunity to come in and seek custody, get involved, participate, and address whatever concerns and issues they have over their children.
Have you seen any impact on family first legislation on fathers engaged with our system? And in addition to that, is there any other legislation that you are seeing a direct effect on fathers in the court system?
I have seen that, and to what degree, it's hard for me to tell, right, sitting on the bench, how many parents and fathers have been impacted. But I've seen it in the sense that it has forced the departments throughout the state to look for fathers, to make sure that they find out who is the father of this child, where can we access them, where can we find them, and then actually seek them out. And even if those fathers are not able to care for the children, seek out their family members. Sometimes the members of the family on the mother's side are not able or capable, but then we have the family on the father's side. But the act has also allowed for social services to provide needs that the parents might provide services that meet the needs that the parents might have, like substance abuse, perhaps mental health. Poverty is not neglect, right? And for a long time, people passed judgment on those who were poor. So providing them with the services that they need to have shelter, to have clothing, to have food, education. Maybe they need parenting classes. Those types of funds are there through this act that have helped not just fathers, but mothers, keeping children with family. Most people don't realize that father's rights are just as equal as a mother's rights once they're established, and they should be given the opportunity to take over their children. So if, for example, the neglect cases against the mother and not the father, and we're removing the children from the mother, well, why not let the father take custody and then provide him with whatever he needs to meet the needs of the children?
Have you seen anything within your jurisdiction that has influenced or increased our practice positively on fathers?
I have. I've seen a lot more cases where the fathers are, I see it in the reports. Okay, we know who the father is. The contact was made or attempted, and either the father was not available, they couldn't reach him, or when they did, the father came to court In many cases, that father was given custody. In some cases, the father applied for custody. So I have seen I did see, and I say I did instead of I have because I don't know, I didn't mention this. I was elected last year to the Supreme Court, so I don't sit in family court. I'm the statewide coordinating judge for family court matters, so I'm still involved in family court as a whole statewide, but I'm not currently sitting as a family court judge. But I did see more fathers coming in. I see them taking children into their custody and into their care, becoming a lot more active in the lives of their children. I have seen that.
So with confidentiality in mind, do you have a success story that you would be willing to share of a father?
Sure. In fact, if you don't mind, I have two that I can think of. So there was this one father that he was not involved in the child welfare system, but the mother of his children was or became involved. And he had been brought to my attention because there was an allegation of domestic violence between him and his current paramour. And he was charged with a crime, a misdemeanor. So as part of the case, I required that he go to a program we call Strength at Home that centers around domestic violence. It started out as a program for veterans who were dealing with the trauma that they suffered that was leading to acts of aggression and winding up in court. And so they expanded that. And so he took the program, and out of his own mouth, he said he got a lot of benefit out of it. Well, while he was in the process of doing all of that, the mother of his children got charged with neglect, and the department removed the children from her care. So, of course, they found out he was the father and asked if he would be willing to take them. Not only did he take them, he wound up with custody. He enrolled them in school. He got a bigger apartment. He was working. He provided daycare. He got daycare. Wow. And he was also making it possible for the mother to see the children while they were in his care. He really, that was the example of stepping up to the plate. Yeah. He actually did everything. He amazed me because this was someone who, really people would have said, there's no way.
Yeah.
Like, there's absolutely no way. He eliminated all excuses, if he even had any, and took the ball and ran with it. The other story, I wanted to share this one experience I had with a friend of mine who was going through a custody battle with the mother of his children. She was giving him a hard time seeing the child. And I said to him, I remember telling him, first of all, don't give up. Fight for your rights. Whatever you must do, do it. But if you have visits, do not miss them. If you must miss them, do not promise your child that you will see them this day or that day or the other. Don't make any promises that you can't absolutely guarantee you will make. But most important, don't forget the things that matter. Birthday. If you can't call, send a card. Christmas, because I knew they celebrated it. Yeah. If you can't have them, make sure you send them a Christmas card. Send them a gift. Don't forget those moments. That's what's going to matter. Fast forward a few years later, he said, I have to tell you something. My son took me into his bedroom and said, Daddy, I need to show you something. He pulled a box from underneath his bed, and it was every card, every letter that his father had ever written to him. Wow. I was so glad that he listened because that was what mattered to his son. Yeah. It wasn't how long you see me. Yeah. It wasn't how often. It was the fact that you remembered me on the days that were important. Yeah. And that's the advice I give any father out there. Don't forget those important moments in your child's life, and don't make any promises that you can't absolutely keep.
Congrats, to your appointment to the Supreme Court.
Thank you.
Are you able to share a little bit about if there's any difference you're seeing in the position you're in now and to what you were seeing before that you wish you still had the impact over when you're at that level?
So not completely, only because as part of my job as a Supreme Court justice, I preside over the integrated domestic violence part in our district, 4 counties in our district, including Albany County. And what that part does is that it brings cases where there's an allegation of domestic violence and there's a criminal charge, and at the same time there's a matter pending in family court, like a family offense petition seeking an order of protection or a neglect case where they removed the children because of domestic violence. I can bring those cases to me in the IDV part and preside over all of them, the criminal part, the family court part. And if there were a married couple and are now getting a divorce, over that divorce. So it's one judge for the one family in all matters. So I still deal with custody. In fact, I have some cases now where there's neglect charges pending, so I'm still doing the Article 10 cases. So there's still that connection.
Yeah.
And I'm glad for that, so I don't fully miss it.
Yeah.
Different capacity.
To me, that sounds like a smart move and something that you'd be like, this didn't happen all the time.
Obviously it's not new. The part here in Albany is new. We just started it last year. Okay. But IDV parts have been for a number of years in place. They started in New York City and out in the Rochester, Buffalo area as pilot programs, and they've expanded.
Okay. Buffalo's always doing big things.
Yes, Buffalo is. What is one piece of advice you would like fathers to know that are engaged with the child welfare system or any system that impacts their children?
I would say ask questions, exercise your right, understand that you have as much right, and in fact, a superior right to custody of your children over anyone other than their mother. And that you have a right to seek custody, even if the children have been placed in foster care. You have a right to an attorney. Exercise your right to an attorney. Don't give up. Press forward. Even if it seems like it's an obstacle that's never ending, just go for it. Just like you would fight for anything else in life. Your children are important to you. If you really, truly do love them, fight for access. And don't take no for an answer. But also be realistic. And if you don't feel that you personally cannot take care of the children, maybe then offer your mother, your father, your sister, your brother, their aunt, their uncle, their godparent, someone else in your family or in your circle of friends who you think would be able to help. But certainly stay involved, be active, be proactive, exercise your right to have access and fight.
As someone who has been really at every level, like Kelly mentioned, boots on the ground, you're a family court judge, now in the Supreme, what advice would you give to other family court judges?
The same advice that I mentioned before for caseworkers and anybody else. Do not make assumptions and place yourself in their shoes. Mm-hmm. What kind of questions would you have that you would want answers for? Don't assume that this person who's sitting in front of you, and we get taught this already, but don't assume that the people in front of you know what you know. Mm-hmm. Don't assume that they are whatever it is that is coming to your mind. Implicit bias impacts all of us, right? And it's something that's inward. And you don't always realize that it's impacting you until you take a moment and ask yourself, well, why did I just treat this person different from that one? Yeah. Maybe it's because I assumed they were poor. The Family First Act also did that blind removal, right, which you both know about. It's that type of idea. If you did not know where they came from, their zip code, and if you were closing your eyes and did not even know what their gender was or their ethnic background, would your decision still be the same? Yeah. And if the answer is yes, well, then fine. But if the answer is no, then you may want to consider changing your position. Compare the cases. So last week I had a white family here with the same circumstances who lived in Colony, and I have this black family here now today who lives in the city of Albany, same circumstances. Mm-hmm. Why am I treating them different? Mm-hmm. What is different about these two families that requires a different result? Because sometimes there is a need for that, but not always. Yeah. And so I would advise them to not pass judgment. Don't make assumptions. Ask yourself, if I were them, what would I want? What information would I need? Would I be making the same decision? And then go from there. And just do that inward search. Why am I ruling this way? Why am I deciding this?
So you touched on something very big when you mentioned, the implicit bias. There's all these different types of biases, and we all hold biases, right? Mm-hmm. In your role and in the role of a judge and a family court judge, I would think that confirmation bias is extremely harmful, right? So how should judges who maybe they want to be different, they want to not approach it in that way, how do they counter the confirmation bias they might be looking for when a family comes in or when a father comes in?
Stop. It's like anything else, right? If you want to interrupt bias, stop for a moment and think. And ask yourself, why am I doing this? why is my decision about to be what I think it should be? That's how you interrupt any form of bias, is by just stopping, taking a moment, pausing, and asking yourself that question. Sometimes we recognize it. You see somebody walk through the door and they have all these tattoos, and you get drawn to that, and you start thinking all kinds of things, whether they're negative or positive, or maybe you think nothing at all. And if you think nothing at all, then it's probably not impacting you. Yeah. But when you see that and when you experience that, you have to acknowledge it as evidence that you are impacted by bias sometimes. And that allows you then to think about it and stop and make your decisions after you pause.
What is your moral compass? What fuels you to do your best work?
Great question.
Well, I have to admit, part of that is I do happen to be a man of faith, so I have my own faith that guides me in general in everything I do. But it's also that sense of wanting to see fairness and justice, and wanting to make sure that when people come through the doors of my courtroom, that they leave feeling like they were heard. They may not like the outcome, they may not agree with it, but that they were given a chance to express their opinion and their feelings and be heard.
So we would like to once again extend our heartfelt thanks to the Honorable Judge Rivera for being with us and sharing your experience and your expertise. And we know our listeners will find a lot of value from what you've shared with us. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, it has been an honor and a privilege to share space with you.
It's been my honor. Thank you.
Kelly, I got to tell you, that was incredible. I mean, Judge Rivera dropped some, more nuggets for us offline, but he had so many that he gave to our listeners. And one of the things that really stuck out for me is that to remember, like for the dads, to remember when the kid isn't physically present in front of you, to operate, to always have them in mind, and that what that could mean. When he mentioned the story about the cards, like that was incredible.
Yeah, just that piece of always continue some means of connection and how far that goes with building a relationship with your child as a father figure. Yes, I think that was, one of his best suggestions and words of advice. I just admire so much how Judge Rivera, even though he holds such a high title and standing, he is also so human. Yeah. He brings that into his role. And I think it's so critical that other key stakeholders emulate that as well in the work we do with our families.
Yeah, and I think, it has to be mentioned that Judge Rivera, some of the questions we asked were, off script, like we came up on the spot. And his ability to address them in the manner he did speaks volumes. The fact that he operates with an inclusive mindset. Like that story he shared about the Christmas. Mm-hmm. And he said he took the time to make mention because I know they celebrated. Absolutely, so to show that he operates that way with inclusive mindset, whereas someone else, we could ask the question, well, how do you know they're Christians? How do you know they celebrate Christmas? He took the time to make sure from an inclusive mindset that he would let us know he knows this, and that's why he says it that way.
Yes, and his ability to bring that into his role is so critical. Oh, yeah.
So one thing that's clear is it's important fathers understand the rights they have. For Felix, he only learned about his rights once he independently obtained an attorney. When I spoke with him, he stressed the importance of staying positive throughout the process. I
honestly would say to not give up and to roll with the punches, man. Don't listen to, the backlash on, it's just a mom's court system, and you're going to lose. It's bad. I say you go for it. It is definitely possible. It's going to be an emotional, very mental journey. But the reward, there is definitely a light at the end of the tunnel.
Unfortunately, it seems so much of the unknown stems from not knowing your legal rights, which reinforces how important education is.
That concludes our first episode of the Rooted in Solutions, Growing Futures podcast. We hope you join us for the rest of our Elevating Fatherhood Voices series, which will explore topics such as adverse childhood experiences, criminal justice, and bias.
We also want to thank Judge Rivera and Felix Garcia for their insight. If you or someone you know needs support, please visit our website, ocfs.ny.gov.
There, you will also find Felix Garcia's full interview, as well as other podcast resources. We'll see you on the next episode.